Hi everyone, it's Tamara here from lalalandcrafts with another card making tutorial. This time I'm using the gorgeous new image from the new release Swimsuit Marci, plus also the floating flamingo die and some other dies from the new release as well. I'll be doing some COPIC colouring of Marci plus the floating flamingo and all the other dies used in this card. I'll do some stamping and then we'll get into some colouring and end with the card making tutorial. So let's get started. Now, as Swimsuit Marci is a rubber back stamp, I'm going to pull her out of the packaging and we'll get her ready to go into our Misty. With the Misty, you will need to remove your black rubber mat from inside because obviously with the padding that's already on Marci, we don't need that in there. I've grabbed some COPIC Expresso cardstock. We'll pull off the backing paper to our image and get her stamped out in Memento Tuxedo black ink. Now, as I'd not used this actual stamp before, I just give it a little bit of prep by rubbing it with my hands and also a microfiber cloth, and that gets her nice and ready to stamp down. So we'll stamp her once. You'll see that I've kind of missed her hand on that side, so we'll give her another stamp up, and now she is perfectly stamped out, ready for colouring. Now I wanted to do some paper piercing of Marci's swimsuit, so I've grabbed out this gorgeous heart pattern paper from the Life Documented paper pack. I'm going to stamp out my image again with my tuxedo black ink so that we've got that perfect image. We only are cutting out the swimsuit, so I'm going to fussy cut that out. Now I always just move the paper, not my scissors, to do my fussy cutting. It actually makes it much easier to get an accurate cutting when you're moving the paper and not your scissors. So now we've got the perfect little swimsuit for Marci. Now, to make it match in with the black lines of our stamping, I just like to run a little black marker around the edges of the swimsuit, and that way it will sit in perfectly on our image. Now I'll pop on some music while we do the rest of the colouring of Marci, and then we'll come in later on and place her swimsuit on once all the colouring has been done. So I'll pop on some music now and I'll see you soon. Now that Marci's all coloured up, we'll get her swimsuit attached. So just pop a little bit of glue and you can just line up perfectly with those black lines, and now she has a gorgeous heart swimsuit. My floating flamingo die and also my other dies I'll be all cutting out of COPIC Expresso because I'll be colouring them up with my COPIC markers. Now with the tropical sunset circle, I'm only going to be using certain elements, so I don't need to cut out the whole thing. I'll just be using the 2 palm trees and the sun, so everything else I can just set aside and use another time. Now I'm also going to be using the snowbanks and also the new release wave dies, and I've already cut them out and I'll be doing some ink blending on those. But I'll put on some music now while I do the Copic colouring of all our die cuts. Now I'm just finishing colouring up our birds of paradise, and I do both of these exactly the same, so I'm only just showing one of this colouring. So this is blending out nicely. I actually just use a photo of a bird of paradise to match in my colouring to what one actually really looks like. So I'm really happy with how these turned out. Now with our ink blending, I'm going to be using Salvaged Patina and Tumbled glass for our water. So I've just started with the Salvaged Patina at the bottom and the Tumbled glass up the top. And I'm just using my dome sponge applicators and working in circular motions to get this all blended out. Then I've just grabbed my distress sprayer just to give some like little water bubbles to our water. With my beach, I'll be using antique linen and tea dye. And again, I'm just starting with the tea dye down the bottom as the darkest and finishing with the antique linen at the top. And then I wanted to kind of create some grounds, like grains of sand. So I've also grabbed out some ground Expresso and also my splatter box. I just kind of dab the ground Expresso on my glass mat, spray it with my distress sprayer, and using a rounded brush, I'm just tapping off the excess onto my beach, and now I've got the perfect grains of sand to my beach. Now I'm just wanting to create a beautiful sunset sky for our scene. So I've grabbed out scattered straw, dried marigold and abandoned coral to create my sky. And these colours just blend beautifully together. I also wanted to create a little white border to go around our sky. So I've grabbed out the largest of the rectangle scallop dies and also the largest of the rounded rectangle stitch dies. So now I've cut that through my die cutting machine, and I now have the perfect frame to frame our sunset sky. Now that panel was just a little bit big, so I've grabbed out my paper trimmer and I've just cut that to size so it fits perfectly behind that frame. So now we'll get our ocean attached to our beach. So I'm just popping a little bit of glue on the waves and get that attached to the bottom. Now this panel is just a little bit bigger again, so I'm just going to grab a pen and just mark to the right of where I want to cut. Grab out my paper trimmer again and just trim that to size so that fits perfectly. Now I've removed my black rubber mat because the sentiments are also rubber backed, and I'm going to be doing some white heat embossing. So I've grabbed some black cardstock from my stash, just prepped it with some anti-static powder, and using my Versa watermark ink, I'm going to double stamp that out to get a nice impression, and grab my white heat embossing powder and my folded piece of white printer paper to catch any excess. Just tap off that, and then you can just scoop that excess back into your bottle so easily. Now I've preheated my heat tool, and then I go into behind first to get rid of any potential particles that might be on top, and then go to the front and do that until it's nice and melted. I allow that time to dry before I use my cloth to wipe off the excess powder from my anti-static powder tool. I've grabbed out my paper trimmer. I'm just going to trim this sentiment banner up to size now. So I'm just lining that up in my tonic trimmer and just going to have an even amount of cardstock around each side of my actual stamp sentiment. So now we'll just trim up that end piece to match in, and now we have the perfect sentiment banner. Now everything's ready to go. We'll start getting everything assembled. So we'll get our palm trees lined up, and they line up perfectly with that snowbanks die. So I've attached them, and we'll attach that sun dropping behind there, and we'll put some glue on this and get it attached to our sunset sky. So just line that up along the bottom, making sure it's all straight, and give it a good press down. Now I'm going to put together my floating flamingo, but I'd actually already posted my card off before I realized that I had actually done this incorrectly. So I'll show you obviously how I did it installed this way, but I'll also show you how to do it correctly. So I've cut out this again. I've used different colors so you can actually see it easy. You can see these scored lines on either side, and it's perfect to line up your head. So you actually pop the head on top of the base. and it lines up with that score line and also the edge of that base, so it's much easier to install it that way. Now we'll get our birds of paradise all put together. So you can put the smaller head on first, or you can put that behind, either way. We'll get our little head of our birds of paradise attached to the base. Then our little leaf kind of coming off to the right. So just popping a little bit of glue on the base of that. And these line up so easily, it's quite fun to put these together. So we've got our leaf attached, and now we can just put our stem in, and as you can see, it just lines up with the shape perfectly with the top. So I'll pop a little bit of glue on our leaf and our top of our head and secure that down, and now we've got our perfect bird of paradise. Now with our tiki torches, I'm going to put the actual flame behind, so I'm going to put the glue on the tiki torch itself. Just line that up so that, and make sure that you can see that flame through the torch and coming out through the top, and then we'll just attach that top to the head of our base. So that's all ready to go. Now we want to secure Swimsuit Marci into the floating flamingo, so I've added a little bit of glue up the top where she sits there, and then a little bit where her legs and feet sit at the base of the flamingo. So now she's nice and secure, ready to attach to our card front. Now we'll get our frame attached to our background now that our water and beach are put on, because that will actually sit a little bit behind. So I find it easier to actually put it on from the back, and that way you know that it's fully lined up and hidden behind that frame. Now I wanted to kind of use the same cardstock that I'd used for Marci's swimsuit. So I've grabbed out another sheet of that from my paper pack, and I'm just going to trim that down to size so there's a nice border around all the edges. And I will have all the measurements in the description box below for you. So I have cut and scored a white card base. I wanted to use some yellow to kind of match in with the other colors that I've used in my sky, and that will go quite nicely with this beautiful heart pattern paper. So we'll get that attached on top of our yellow cardstock, because as you can see there are some nice yellow hearts in that paper pack as well. So I'm just going to trim these two down to size. They do come with a variety of sizes, but I'd chosen the biggest. But I'm going to angle them off to the side. So I'm just going to get our sentiment attached to our background scene, just kind of sitting up, kind of coming off that frame and sitting in the sky. Make sure that it's all lined up and straight. And now we'll get our two tiki torches attached, kind of sitting off on the sides, just kind of hanging off the tops a little on either side as well. And then we'll have our background sky attached to there, just sitting over those. So I'm just kind of lining them up and making sure that they're going to be hidden behind that framed picture. So now that I've got them in place, I just want to work out where I'm going to attach my birds of paradise. So I kind of want one kind of tucked in behind on the right, just kind of growing out to the side of our frame and our sky. So I've lined that up down the bottom, just working out where I want it, because I don't want it to obstruct our sentiment. So I've just got that kind of coming up just under our sentiment. And now we'll get this panel attached to our card front. And now that all the stuff that's going to be behind it are placed, we can get everything else put on the top, which will actually sit all above. Now I just wanted to work out, I was kind of umming and ahhing where to put the second bird of paradise. I was going to initially tuck it behind Marci, but I end up tucking it kind of up to the top, just opposite where the other one is, and just sitting above that sentiment, so that both of the birds of paradise are together. So I'm not sure, you might have a different idea and think it better behind Marci. So I'd love to see any other cards that everyone makes and see how they place this out. So I'm going to get some glue for Marci where she's going to be kind of sitting over that sky and the beach and water. And then I will pop a couple of square foam dots kind of underneath her, where she kind of sits above that frame. So I've just put a little bit there, and I'm going to tuck one just kind of behind her hair to support this side of the image. And this is the finished card project for this tutorial. Swimsuit Marci is so beautiful, and I loved doing the paper piecing of her swimsuit. I think you could have so much fun swapping out little swimsuits for her. And I love all the other elements that come with this set. That floating flamingo is just gorgeous, and I think you could put so many different critters or people sitting in that flamingo. I hope you've enjoyed this card making tutorial. If you have, please hit the like button, and if you'd like to see any future videos, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.